The Spanish-American War of 1898 marked a turning point in United States history, transforming the nation into a global power. The conflict began after years of U.S. interest in Cuba's struggle for independence from Spain. When the American battleship USS Maine mysteriously exploded in Havana Harbor, sensationalist newspapers blamed Spain, fueling public outrage and pushing the U.S. toward war. In April 1898, the United States declared war on Spain. The fighting was brief but decisive. American forces quickly defeated the Spanish in both the Caribbean and the Pacific, capturing Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. The Treaty of Paris, December 1898, officially ended the war, granting these territories to the United States and marking the beginning of American overseas imperialism. Although the war was celebrated as a victory for freedom and democracy, it also revealed the U.S. desire for expansion and global influence. The acquisition of new colonies raised questions about America's role in the world, whether it would remain a defender of liberty or become an imperial power like those it once opposed. The Spanish-American War of 1898 was one of the most significant turning points in the history of the United States. Before this conflict, America had focused mainly on expanding within North America. However, by the end of the 19th century, the nation began to look beyond its borders for new opportunities, trade routes, and influence. The war against Spain not only brought an end to Spanish colonial rule in the Americas, but also marked the beginning of the United States as a major world power with overseas territories. The roots of the war lay in Cuba's struggle for independence from Spain. Americans sympathized with the Cuban revolutionaries, partly because of shared ideals of freedom, and partly due to economic interests in the island. The American press, using sensationalist yellow journalism, exaggerated Spanish atrocities, and stirred strong public support for intervention. The situation escalated dramatically after the explosion of the USS Maine in Havana Harbor on February 15, 1898, killing over 260 sailors. Although the cause of the explosion was unclear, American newspapers blamed Spain, and the slogan, "Remember the Maine, to hell with Spain," became a rallying cry for war. In April 1898, the United States declared war on Spain. The conflict was short but decisive, lasting only about 4 months. U.S. naval power proved superior, most notably in the Battle of Manila Bay in the Philippines, where Commodore George Dewey destroyed the Spanish fleet. Meanwhile, American forces, including the famous Rough Riders, led by Theodore Roosevelt, captured key positions in Cuba such as San Juan Hill. By the summer of 1898, Spain's forces had collapsed both in the Caribbean and the Pacific. The war officially ended with the Treaty of Paris, signed on December 10, 1898. Under the treaty, Spain gave up control of Cuba and ceded Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines to the United States. This dramatically expanded American influence overseas. While some Americans celebrated these victories as proof of national strength and progress, others criticized the annexation of foreign lands as imperialism, arguing that it betrayed the country's founding ideals of liberty and self-determination. In conclusion, the Spanish-American War was not merely a brief military conflict. It was the event that launched the United States onto the global stage. It ended centuries of Spanish colonialism and marked the beginning of American imperial power. The new territories gained from Spain became stepping stones for U.S. influence in Latin America and Asia, shaping the nation's foreign policy for decades to come. Effects and significance of the Spanish-American War. The Spanish-American War had profound and lasting effects on both the United States and the world. One of the most immediate outcomes was the emergence of the United States as a global power. Before 1898, the U.S. had been primarily focused on continental expansion, but victory over Spain demonstrated its military and industrial strength on an international level. The acquisition of overseas territories, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines extended America's reach into both the Caribbean and the Pacific, providing new trade routes and military bases. This marked the beginning of an era of American imperialism, where the U.S. actively sought to influence political and economic affairs beyond its borders. Politically, the war transformed U.S. foreign policy. The country began to move away from its traditional policy of isolationism and toward a more interventionist stance. The new colonies became symbols of national pride, but also sparked intense debates about imperialism versus democracy. Many Americans, including the writer Mark Twain and the politician William Jennings Bryan, joined the Anti-Imperialist League, arguing that controlling other nations contradicted America's founding principles of freedom and self-government. On the other hand, Supporters like Theodore Roosevelt believed that expansion would bring progress and civilization to other parts of the world, justifying imperial rule under the idea of benevolent assimilation. Economically, the war opened new markets for American goods and investments. The Philippines became a gateway to trade with Asia, particularly China, while Puerto Rico and Cuba strengthened U.S. influence in the Caribbean. These developments contributed to America's rise as an economic powerhouse in the early 20th century. Internationally, the war signaled the decline of the Spanish Empire and the birth of a new global order. Spain's defeat ended centuries of its dominance in the Americas and the Pacific, while the United States took its place as a major world player. This shift also encouraged other powers, such as Japan and Germany, to take notice of America's growing strength. In summary, the Spanish-American War had far-reaching consequences. It redefined America's identity from a continental republic to an imperial power with global ambitions. The war's legacy is complexly celebrated for ending Spanish tyranny, yet criticized for launching an age of American expansionism. Ultimately, it marked the beginning of the United States' rise as one of the most influential nations in modern world history. Conclusion. In conclusion, the Spanish-American War of 1898 was more than a brief military victory. It was a defining moment in the transformation of the United States into a global power. Through its triumph over Spain, the nation gained new territories, expanded its economic and military reach, and began shaping international affairs beyond its own continent. Yet this success also raised difficult questions about America's moral and political identity, whether it stood as a champion of freedom or as an imperial power driven by ambition. The debates and consequences that followed the war marked the beginning of a new era in U.S. history, one characterized by overseas involvement, economic expansion, and the pursuit of global influence. The Spanish-American War thus stands as a crucial turning point that reshaped both the destiny of the United States and the balance of power in the modern world.